I like tell people I'm lucky my hobby turned into a business, and then sometimes I say now I don't have a hobby anymore, but it's still all pretty good.
A quick interruption to remind you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, it's Ari Santiago. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Made in America podcast. Really exciting episode today. We're with Clayton Walters, president of Clayton Off Road. I'm so excited to talk about this business, which is growing, new and exciting startup in Connecticut. Well, I don't know about startup Clayton, but certainly innovative and growing. And I'm really excited to tell your story. So thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome, Ari. It's good to be here.
Well, listen, man, it's the Made in America podcast. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make? Why do you make it?
We manufacture lift kits and suspension components for the Jeep vehicles going back to the 1984 Jeep Cherokee. Was a little boxy SUV. It was the first Jeep that had coil springs in the front. And then we go all the way through to the Grand Cherokees, and every Jeep has a designation, 2 letters. Like that original Cherokee was an XJ. The next was the Grand Cherokee. That was a ZJ. And then there was another version of that. It's a WJ. And then the TJ came out in 1997, which was called a TJ. And that went till 2007, and it became the new 4-door edition of the Wrangler. And that was a JK. In 2018, the JL, and then 2019, I think the new Gladiator came out. It's called the JT. But so that's what we do. We build lift kits, various components. You might not buy a whole lift kit from us. You might just buy control arms or track bars, sway bar links, things of that, springs. And the reason we do it is I've always had a passion for the Jeeps. I had an 84 CJ7, which was a leaf sprung Jeep back, bought it brand new, drove it for about, I guess around 10 years, and then traded in a minivan. And it's kind of a joke to everybody. But then I got back into this around 97 and just, I bought a Grand Cherokee and then started developing products for that. And it's always been a passion of mine. I like tell people I'm lucky my hobby turned into a business, and then sometimes I say now I don't have a hobby anymore, but it's still all pretty good. I guess it's really it has exploded for us, our business. This year, I know things have been tough for a lot of people, but it's been good for the Jeep enthusiasts. I feel blessed. I feel that, like, because of that, I think people are just trying to do things outdoors. There's kind of a trend going on. They call it overlanding instead of the just the rock crawling, trail riding stuff that originally, like up to now, people are just using their Jeeps to go camping and
now they're doing a little bit more extreme Jeeping. Hey, before we get into that, because I definitely want to talk a lot about about the kits and what you're doing, because I think it's super interesting and innovative. What you've done, and really I think tapped into. Again, I know a couple guys that work for me are really into Jeeps, and I know that people that love their Jeeps really, really love their Jeeps. There's a cool factor, so we'll get into all that. But before we get there, I'm always like super fascinated by the personal story and the why. And I connected when we had a chance to kind of meet, pre-show and talk. I was just really connected to your like passion, because something we have in common is we both ended up doing professionally, but we had a personal passion for.
Right.
So, I mean, when did you realize you had a passion for Jeeps?
It was an early age. It's kind of funny. I can remember having this little white Jeep, and it was modeled after an old CJ2A, and it ran on batteries, and it was 4-wheel drive, and it
like an RC car.
Well, it wasn't. I'm old enough. There was no RC cars when I was that age. This was just a little car. You put batteries in, you turned it on, and it crawled along, and it was 4-wheel drive, and it could go up and that over stuff. And that was always my passion, and I loved it. And that's what in '84, I bought that brand new Jeep. That was a CJ.
So is that like thinking about people that don't know CJ, TJ, RJ? Which one's a CJ? That's like the one with the kind of two-door.
So basically, what most people think of as a Jeep, right? So it was always the CJ was the original designation going back to the Army, CJ2A, and it was 3. And then it was a 5, and then a CJ7, and then that was replaced by they called it a YJ, and that's the Jeep style that you see that has the rectangular headlights.
Yep.
They went away from the round headlights to the rectangular ones, and then that went away. They went back to the round headlights when the TJ came out in 1997. So that's where it all started, and I was lucky that I had. Got rid of my Jeep, and then I got back into it when I bought this Grand Cherokee in around 1997. And
do you ever miss the minivan?
I actually loved that. That was one of my favorite vehicles. When my parents lived in Kentucky, I'd take my 2 kids were young, and we would just drive. It was about 13 hours, and I could just pull over on the side of the highway and hang my daughter out in the sliding door, and she saved a lot of time traveling, right? Stopping at the rest stops. But I had some aspirations of turning that into a 4-wheel drive, but never happened.
Didn't happen. No. So you got back to the Jeep, and then what got you thinking like, hey, I should come up with something to make this Jeep even cooler?
Well, this is probably, there was a lot of like online forums. It was a forum called Grand Cherokee America, and it was just a group of people that had Grand Cherokees. And this was before there was a lot of companies making lift kits and products for them. So I started out making rock rails to go under the doors to protect the rocker panels, and making bumpers, and that I did that for a couple of years, and I was like, oh my God, there's just no money in this, and so I kept lifting my Jeep little by little, my Grand Cherokee. And then I got to the point, like a couple of people had lifted their Jeeps up 6 inches, and they were like, actually one guy crashed it and totaled it. And he wrote a big article how it was not feasible to lift your Grand Cherokee this much. And so I was like, yeah. So I decided I was going to do it. And I literally swapped in axles out of a old Grand Wagoneer, put a 6-inch lift kit on, built my old control arms, and it drove so bad that I literally started crying on the kitchen table. And so I did some tweaking, and I got it to where it was drivable. But my old girlfriend, she nicknamed it the squirrel, because when you drove down the road, you're always going like this with the wheel to try to keep it straight. So that summer after that, this company, Rubicon Express, who was one of the leaders, they had come out what's called the long arm kit for the TJ or the Wrangler. And I was like, I got to figure out how to make that for my Grand Cherokee, because it really enhances the handling a lot. So I developed this product and put it on, and it was just like night and day. You could drive straight down the road, just really redesigned the whole suspension geometry to make it handle better. And people were pestering me, are you ever going to make that? You're going to make it? And I was like, I don't know. It's like a lot of work and too big of a. So finally I decided, I was like, all right, I'll make them. I said, but I need to get an order for 10 long arm upgrade kits.
But meanwhile, what are you doing for work? Like this is your hobby.
I was a plant manager, plant engineer at a big polystyrene plant in Connecticut. And so I was doing this on the side, but so lo and behold, in 1 week, I had $15,000 worth of checks for order. I had 10 kits on order in 1 week. And I started working out of a 1-car garage. And that's how it all started.
Where did the orders come from?
All over the country. One of the
Would you post it on like a Jeep forum?
Yep, or? On that Grand Cherokee America. I actually had, when I first started this, I had 3 people. They flew me to San Francisco, and I did 3 installs in San Francisco for people And then a few years later, I developed another kit for the newer model Grand Cherokee, and I had 3 people fly me to Denver, and I installed the kits there, and it just snowballed from there. So let's see, so look at my math of, I think around 2005, I sold half the business to a good friend of mine who was in the Jeep Club with me. He's actually 17 years younger than me, and he was actually the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding 10 years ago, and he was the best man at my wedding 2 years ago. So we've had a great relationship, but he bought half the business and we didn't even have a phone. There was no phone, there was no email address, there was just nothing, and he had just been getting out of college. And so he had some time to devote to it. And so it's been a great story.
So is that kind of would you say that him kind of coming on board in that 2005 kind of helped launch it from sort of a sideshow to a main show?
Yes. I was still working a full-time job at that point, and I had 2 kids that were, I guess can't think of all the numbers, but they were 10, 12 years old, and so I had time with them. And I said, like, if I hadn't got divorced, I would have never had time to start this business, right? Because the kids were with their mom half the time, and I was able to do this stuff at night.
It's not hard. It's not easy to start a business anytime. I can't imagine, trying to do it and sort of juggle family responsibilities. So that's maybe why it's so helpful that it was a passion, right? Because you enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was something I kind of dreamed about, My original background was in building industrial equipment and stuff like that, and fabricating, and kind of spun off.
Do you think that helped you, like having that kind of background and passion in manufacturing and building industrial equipment? I mean, how helpful was that in getting you even the ability to think of creating the lift kit to start off with?
It was pretty instrumental. Like the company I worked for, like we built a lot of our own manufacturing equipment. So I had a background in it, and we always did it because it was a lot cheaper than trying to go out and have somebody do it, and like now, for instance, like try to think out of the box, right? We needed a robotic welder about 10 years ago. A new robotic welder was, $100,000, a used one that was a whole cell was, $40,000 or $50,000. And we didn't have that kind of money. So I went on eBay and I bought a used robotic welder that was just a welder and a robot bolted to a skid, designed my old welding cell. And I found the integrator down in North Carolina to get it all running for me. And so, I think all in all, I had, less than $10,000 into this robotic welder, just things like that. I had an old milling machine that the CNC control on it just crapped out and was a pain. So I had contacts from my other job with a company called Centroid, and they sold retrofit CNC packages, right? So I didn't have to spend, $40,000 or $50,000 on a new milling machine. For $5,000, I retrofitted the old one. I constantly build, different machinery. Like I have a press to push in inserts into our control arms that we weld after that, So just stuff like that, innovative stuff that I know. And, like when a machine breaks down in the shop, I don't have a maintenance crew. I, go out there and figure out.
Got to do it. You listen, man, that's part of the gig, right?
Yep,
I mean, as I kind of mentioned before, people always feel like, the overnight success, and usually those overnight successes have long stories that lead up to them. But I think let's talk a little bit about the growth you guys have experienced, because, you sort of started in the late 90s, a little bit like a hobby, maybe 05 really started to put it together. But it seems like in the last several years, you really have found a way to turn this, into a stronger business, and you've seen some strong growth. Like, just give the audience a little bit of that story. Like what's happened in the last several years to get you in the position for what you guys have been doing this year?
But, I was thinking about this the other day, and, just to prepare a little bit here. And when I sold the business, half the business to my business partner, we were doing, under $100,000 a year in business, right? so I think every year it doubled, right? So for about 5 years. And then, so we got, in that $600,000 range over, 4 or 5 years. And then it took us another like 4 or 5 years to double that business. And we've been, for the last 5 years, we've kind of been sitting in that, $1.2 million an hour, dollars annually, in sales. And a couple of years ago, I really was like, all right, I'm going to have to, we were making a living, but we weren't making really a lot of money. And I was like, all right, either I have to just get out of this business or do something to change it. So I started looking at our costs and stuff. And I was spending about $125,000 a year on having parts laser cut and bent. And then we would do the final fabrication, welding and powder coating and stuff. So I ran the numbers. It turned out I only was spending about $25,000 a year in steel cost, right? So I'm like, okay, so this laser work and bending is costing me, it's a lot of money. So I went through the voucher program with the state and got a grant from them to put in my own press brake to bend the steel. So I was able to now just bring in flat steel and bend it myself. So that was about a $50,000 savings right there, so that was one thing. And another thing that happened was it took me so long to do R&D work because I would design a part, and by the time I sent it out to my laser cutter, got it back in, it was like 3 weeks, and it just took so much time. And then you played through the nose, for a part that might be $15, you're paying $150 to get a couple of them. So I went back to the state again, and I got another grant to put in a plasma table so now I can make a part. It's not perfect, but it lets me test my design out. I got a plasma table. So now I'm able to design something, go out, cut it, bend it in my press brake, weld it up, install it on the vehicle. Yes, it works. And then, we can go into production mode. And then along this time too, is like, I realized that, we have to, do more of marketing, and we just didn't have the time for it. And, so I had hired a friend of mine that we knew from the Jeeps, and she tried to work remotely from her house, but it didn't really work out. So we tried that for about a year, and then just by chance, I was trying to hire a production or manufacturing associate, and I get a phone call from a guy, a kid, whatever you want to call it, young man, and he's like, I'm gonna be honest, I have nothing to do. I have nothing about this. But he goes, I work at a dealership in the Jeep dealership in the finance department. And he goes, I don't want to do this. And I was like, all right, well, he goes, but I am going to school for marketing. And I was like, well, maybe we could use you in the different. And so we had hired him just about a year ago. And then, in all honesty, I just feel blessed with this whole COVID thing that, but in May, our business over doubled. So, we don't know how much, obviously our marketing helped us because we got a lot more exposure out there in the market on forums and on Instagram and Facebook. And our marketing guy did a great job with that. But I think overall, in general, people are just doing different things with their money now because they're not going out. And, I know personally, like my wife and I are probably saving $1,000 a month not eating out, so, and just, or the other thing I was, that people, like when you lift your Jeep up, and most people are passionate about it, but you get to enjoy it every day, right? You go spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a vacation, it's over with, and most of the time you go like, the anticipation of that vacation was actually better than the vacation, So that's
no, listen, you talk about the fact that, was it luck? Was it this? Was it that? But, I'm a big believer that, luck is when skill meets opportunity. And, you were out there, you made the decision to invest in marketing and get the message out there about what Clayton Off Road was doing.
Right.
And then when the opportunity arrived where people needed to make a decision, you were already out there so they could make that decision.
Right.
You know, if you had decided to start the marketing now, you'd already be behind the 8 ball. They might be getting their Jeep lift somewhere else or whatever.
Right. Right.
So what got you to think about, you know, I remember in my business career, realizing that investing in sales and marketing was critical to getting the message out there, right? Like there's almost doesn't matter how good your product is if no one knows about it.
Well, I you know, we've always had a reputation of having the best product on the market with the worst marketing campaign. And I could just see with the, you know, social media and stuff that it wasn't who had the best product anymore. It was who had the most presence in the market and social media and advertising and stuff like that. So I had a good story about that whole thing of like, we bought this big toter home and 40 freight. It was a big Freightliner, FL 112 Freightliner. It's called the toter home. And there was a 16-foot box, living quarters on the back. And then it had a fifth wheel, and we towed a 43-foot trailer. And we traveled all over the country from California, Utah, all the way back to Daytona. Every year we did this loop with that thing and did shows. But the guy we bought it from was a drag racer in Texas. And he said to me, this kind of made me realize what was going on. He goes, you know, he had in the 70s, he goes, I made a fortune drag racing with sponsorships and stuff. And into the 80s, and he goes, when the internet started and digital marketing, he goes, I couldn't get sponsors anymore. I couldn't make a living. And he goes, I got out of it. Couldn't. And so, you know, that told me that, you know, traveling around to all these shows and stuff's not really where it is, right? And to be honest, like so about 2 years ago, we stopped going to shows, right? And this year we went to a couple last year, and then this year we've gone to any.
Right.
And then with the explosion of our business it just kind of proves more. And I've talked to other people. I had a friend come out from Wisconsin that he's in the Jeep business, but he does a little bit different things. And he's like, I don't know that I'm going to do any more shows, you know.
All about digital.
Yep.
You're on Instagram?
Yep.
Facebook?
Yep.
You rocking like the TikTok with the young kids?
I tell you the truth, I don't know. I'm glad I hired this marketing guy. I actually, the Friday after the election, I deactivated my Facebook account, and I'm just been not worrying about anything anymore. I listened to one show, The Five on Fox, on the way home every day, and because
that's the end for you.
And it's been so much more relaxing, you know.
But company wise, you guys are leaning into the digital marketing.
My daughter actually works for a company called Drift up in Boston, and she's pushing me all the time. She's like, Dad, you got to get a bot. You got to get a bot on your website, you know? And I'm like, yeah, but we don't really have a full-time salesperson so that might be like our next step. You know, our marketing guy, he actually spends a lot of time on sales too. And we're going to try to hire another person or two this year so that we can move him just into the marketing end. And what I think one of the biggest things is, you know, developing content to put up, you know, on
How do you guys
YouTube.
do that now? When you think about content?
Well, we've been so busy. Like when Jamie is our marketing guy, when he started, you know, it was a year ago in November, so almost a year ago, he spent a lot of time. We got making videos, taking pictures of products and doing stuff like that. And then we got so busy in May, he got just sucked into the day-to-day, answering the phones, answering questions. But so we got to try to get back to that. And then actually this is great practice for me to
get out there talking about what's going on.
Gotta make some videos for Clayton Off Road now, right?
There you go. So what's the dream, man? What's the future look like?
It's always changing, but I do. We have. It's hard to say what we have. We need more space right now. We're really cramped, so I'm working on buying the building we're in, and when we do that, we're going to add on 3,000 square feet and keep leasing out the other half. And then eventually, if we need to, we could go right. We have 5,000 now. We'll go to 8, and then if we ever need, we could have 13,000 square feet. So that's kind of, we determined that rather than invest in new equipment and stuff, that space would just make us the most efficient. But I used to do a lot of custom work and fabrication and stuff on people's Jeeps and projects. I've had one of the biggest, funnest things we ever did was this is going back like 10 years ago. We actually had a couple ship us their Jeeps over from England. And we did, I'm trying to think. I mean, it was probably in the neighborhood of a, $70,000 or $80,000 project to build the 2 Jeeps up. And then they flew over, they got in them, and they drove them to Moab, Utah, and they got married there. And then they continued driving to California with them, and then shipped them back to England. So I kind of missed the custom fabrication and doing that stuff. So
maybe pick that up on the side, a little bit of custom.
Well, yeah, I mean, I might go someday. I'd like to have my own shop at my house that I could go out and putter around and work on somebody's Jeep and stuff like that. And but then the long plane, like I'm going to be 58 in January, and so I'd like to. It's always a trade-off, right? Like right now, I have a lot of time to spend with my 10-year-old daughter and my family and stuff. And if the company gets too big, it's going to be a little bit stressful. My business partner has a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old too. So, but I think
you enjoying it.
What's that?
You enjoying it?
Oh yeah. It's fun. I got married 2 years ago after being single for divorced for 20 years, and that's been great. But I think my long range plan is that, I don't know, 5 years or so down the road, I want to be where I don't have to go into the office every day. And my wife and I are tired of the cold, and we want to spend 6 months someplace else in the country. But it's an awesome opportunity for me. We talk about buying a motorhome, and I could go out west and promote the business and do shows and stuff in the winter. And so Arizona or something like that. So that's probably what will happen. We'll see.
You happy that you took your passion and your hobby and made it into something you could do for work every day?
Oh yeah. It's I'm still good friends. My old boss, where I worked for 20 years as a plant manager, he's actually, his dad and my dad were cousins. So I guess it makes us cousins once removed, and we're still fun or have friends. And I still talk to him every once in a while. I actually, the other part of the business is, so I miss working on the Jeeps. I also miss building equipment and stuff, So I've actually done some work for my old boss. He's actually he'll come in with a project, and I'll take my plasma table and my press brake and make up a bunch of parts, and he takes them and welds them and puts them together because I just don't have the room for it right now. But that's something I kind of would like to diversify the business a little bit. The other thing that's nice about, like, a lot of I've known a few people that had machine shops and fabrication shops, and they've tried to sell their businesses, and they haven't been able to because it's the owner that kind of runs the business, and it's just a bunch of equipment and stuff. And then I know a couple other businesses that were machine shop fabrications, and they develop product lines. Like, for instance, sound manufacturing down in Old Saybrook, they actually designed a whole line of leaf vacuums and stuff like that, right? So when you can have a business like mine say, I have a product line that sells, that's paying my rent, paying for my equipment, paying my salaries. So any extra business that I could bring in outside of industry is kind of like gravy work, right? I can do that if my machines aren't running at 100% capacities. That's another option. You could just kind of diversify a little bit, you know.
Are you thinking about more products? Like you mentioned R&D.
We always have. I mean, I have.
Is there a lot more wood to chop on the Jeep?
Well, yeah. We haven't. You know, I've had people talk to me about doing stuff for Toyotas, and the Jeep's the huge market. You know, now the new Bronco's coming out. That, you know, I just don't have. I don't have the time right now, but that's something we're working on trying to get. You know, for the first time, I feel like because of the growth in the business, we have the capital and the money to kind of invest. You know, I think of an employee as like a piece of equipment, right? It's gonna probably cost you, you know, could cost you $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 the first year before you start getting before that's paid off, right? So it's kind of like almost like an investment, you know. So but that's kind of where we're going with that.
So we're just kind of running out of time a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, you know, you talked a couple of times about, you know, using like grants from the state, and I think probably you said the MIF funds or whatever is the program that you used. How did you find out about that stuff?
Let me think if I could think of the name of the company. I can't even think of who they were. It was like a consulting company or something. Or they told me about it. It's the Connecticut Manufacturing Innovation Program. They called it. It was CAT, and a lot of people probably don't know this, but it's a program that the state has. If you're a manufacturer and like they want you to invest in innovating, like if you need new equipment that's going to make you more efficient, or it's going to let you develop a product. It even works towards training. But they'll give any manufacturer, if it's approved project, up to $50,000, right? So you could have $100,000 project that you submit to the state. If it gets approved, they'll give you $50,000 back, right? And you don't have to use it all at once. You know, we still even have. I've gotten about almost 40,000 from them. So I still have $10,000 left that I can try to go back and get, you know, for another project. So, but
has that been helpful in growing the business?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, well, you think about it. It's just, you know, when you got to go to the bank and borrow money and make monthly payments, you know, so, you know, like that, when I bought that press brake, it was like a $52,000 project. And what happens is you roll. So there was the machine cost, there was the rigging costs, the shipping costs. We had to run power to it. And then I had to buy all the tooling for it. So that was all lumped into this project, right? So instead of having to come up with $52,000, I only had to come up with $26,000, right?
It's a good way to get started, right? And then that goes into the business, invest in the business, grow jobs, grow the business. And you guys show how that like kind of turns it around. Now you're buying a building and growing the thing. So that's where those programs can be super helpful.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is like I've had people ask me, you know, like everybody is under this conception that, it takes so much, it's so hard to start a business. It's not. These days, the internet and stuff, if you have a product and you can sell it out of your house, you don't have to go register, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to be a business, you can just start selling stuff. You know, I used to keep my taxes on an Excel spreadsheet. I got this money in, I spent my money on this, I gave it to the accountant. I wasn't even incorporated, right? And
dude, it's funny, we were talking this whole time, and I was just kind of thinking inside to myself and a little bit laughing that, you know, I don't know that anyone would think it when you just sort of talk about, you know, kind of building, you know, off-road lift kits and riggings and stuff for Jeeps. But this entire business was all predicated on the internet, right? It was the forums that got you impassioned about it. It was the forums that got you your first jobs. It's the marketing online that's been getting it to you. It's the online searching for vendors and partners that helped you find better ways to operate the products. I'm just been laughing that, the internet is so pervasive in our lives. We don't even necessarily realize it. I'm just funny that you brought it up because I've been thinking about that.
Right. Yeah. I would have never been involved in the business if it wasn't for, going on that forum. And it was actually, what it was there was like I think they had the East, South, and then there was like another group organization in Midwest, and then there was one out West. But they used to, once a year, everybody used to get, they called it, because it was Grand Cherokees, they called it Grand Slam. And it was, everybody got together and went camping. We particularly used to meet up down in Virginia, but then they used to do it in Moab and stuff. And so you had all these group of people, and, people were just like developing, hey, can you make this? Can you make that? Or, oh, we need this or that. And, I was able to develop the stuff like that. But the long arm kit was the biggest thing that kind of launched us. I didn't even make like full lift kits. Those long arm upgrade kits were just an upgrade kit. So somebody had already lifted their Jeep up and it handled horribly.
This was just helping someone who had already tried it but didn't get it right.
We would put this suspension system on. You get new brackets, you weld it to the frame and control arms, and it really helped. It made a big difference with the handling and stuff.
Man, that's awesome. Listen, start small and you grow it. That's how we all got there.
Right.
Listen, Clayton, it's been great chatting with you. You ready for a rapid fire round of questions? Will you wrap this thing up?
Sure.
All right, you ready? Here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Oh boy. I guess, I don't know. I'm not really into baseball, but I guess I would have to say, I would probably pick Red Sox because my daughter lives in Boston.
There we go. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
I've always gone back and forth, but I've kind of been off of both of those places since we bought our Keurig. But my stepson works at Starbucks, so I have to go.
There we
Starbucks.
Go. When you take time off, forgetting that we have COVID, if you took time off, you a staycation guy or exotic destination?
What was that again?
For take time off.
Yep.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Oh no, we staycate. My wife and I, our dream is to be able to hire somebody to come to the house and have coffee and breakfast ready, and then we go out to the pool or we go to the beach or we take the boat out. And we tell them whether we're going to be home for lunch or not, and what we want for dinner, and it's ready when we come home. And
that's your dream time off.
And our bed's made, the laundry's done, the dishes are put away for a week.
That would be it. All right, that's staycation for sure. I think this next question is pretty straightforward, but sports car or SUV?
Oh, well, I've been thinking about getting a fast car again. I had a WRX. I traded it in on a pickup truck, but I don't know. I would take a sports car over
Sports car?
Yeah.
Are you too many Jeeps in your life?
Yeah. I would.
Sports car?
Yeah.
All right. Well, about this. What's something that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think helped you have all the success that you've had?
It wasn't, I don't know. I think it was like I have to say my dad was, I think probably the biggest thing I have is just, and I learned it playing Pop Warner football, just drive and desire and work hard. And, that just, we had a really hard, like this coach, and he was a hard ass, but it taught me discipline and working hard. And then the other thing, my dad, he always used to think, right? Think about what you're doing, think about what's going on. And just think one of my biggest skills is just being able to figure anything. Like I tell people, I was like, if you say to me and you said you need to go to the moon, you want to go to the moon, I'll figure out a way to get you to the moon. I'm not going to build your rocket ship, but I'll find somebody that can and
put it all together
and make it work,
That's funny. What's something that you learned later in your career or later in your life that if you told young Clayton and he'd listen to you, you think it'd make a big positive impact?
I don't know. I guess like, I have 105 credits to my engineering degree and never finished. I don't know whether that was a plus or minus or what I would be doing now if I had gotten my degree. But I do know that I go like, Jesus, if I could remember, I remember something about that in college, but I can't, and I could have used that now, but I don't know. I think the whole business standpoint, I guess the biggest thing is, yes, in hindsight, I should have hired a marketing person like 10 years ago. I guess would probably be my biggest
Go
thing.
back and hire a marketing person.
Right,
sooner.
right.
Dude, that's really great. I think that's a great place to end, because I think it is so important that people remember that you said it before, you were like the best product that nobody knew about. And I just connected with that because people used to say to me back in the day, oh, you guys are like the best provider, but best kept secret in the state, and that
right.
Your business ain't growing if nobody knows about you. Listen, Clayton, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your views and your history and your experience. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ari. It was great being here.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a community where we can learn and grow together. Your input, feedback, and engagement is critical to making that happen. Please do comment, like, and subscribe so more and more people can hear what we're doing and join our community of growth and success. Thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you again soon.